Hi, I'm Sharon Epstein, and I'm here with Jen Fredericks. And we're talking today about how you can reduce your stress and show up as the parent and caregiver that you really want to be. I'm a parent coach, and I help parents resolve conflicts and struggles that they're having with their kids between the ages of preschool and teens so that everyone in your family can get along better and you can have more peace and love in your family and your life.
I'm Jen Fredericks. I'm a personal resilience practitioner and a pro-resilience coach. I primarily work with family caregivers and chronic illness patients, and my real zone of work lies with those who are dealing with pediatric illnesses. And I'm also a parent.
Wonderful. And so we decided to come together to help all of you, again, learn how to reduce the stress that you're experiencing right now. And we know that parents in general report having a lot more stress in their lives than the average adult. And we also know just from our lived experience where that's coming from. It's coming from the financial stresses we have of getting through daily life or paying for childcare or paying for college or the increased demands on our time and just feeling like we don't have enough of it to do all the things that we want to do or to give enough time to our children or our loved ones or concerns about our children's health, whether they're ill or they're having mental challenges. And we know there's been an increase in anxiety and feelings of loneliness in kids in the last few years. There's also a lot going on with managing technology and social media for our kids. Are they safe? What should they be doing? Do we know what they're doing? Not to mention how easy it is for us to get sucked into social media and lose time, and sometimes have difficulty, with a share or comparing things that we see other people doing. And oh, wow, it looks like everybody else's life is great. Why is mine not feeling that way? We have our own feelings of isolation and loneliness. And there are these cultural messages that are constant that blame parents when our kids misbehave and tell us that it's our fault and that we're doing things wrong and that we need to do even more than we think we're already doing. So it's no wonder that parents feel more stress than the average parent. There's a lot going on for us.
There
And so,
certainly is.
yeah. Ever felt any of these?
Oh no.
Not me.
Mhm. Yeah.
Right. So we wanted to take a look at how it might be affecting you personally when you're feeling the specific stresses that are relevant to you. And you want to start us off, Jen? What are some of the things that we know people are feeling?
Right. Well, I mean, one of the first even quotes that comes to mind for me is the one comparison is the thief of joy. I believe Theodore Roosevelt said that. But when we take a look at some of the issues that you just talked about a few minutes ago, we start comparing and we feel and think to ourselves, well, I'm not a good parent or I'm not a good caregiver. Like I can't imagine, like I remember how many times I felt that way in the past, or I even to this day feel that way sometimes, and I'm in the work all of the time.
For sure. And a one that I hear a lot, and I used to think a little bit to myself, is if my child is misbehaving, that means I'm failing. Right.
Yeah.
But kids are supposed to misbehave, right? Didn't we all misbehave when we were young? Because we don't know. We're little.
No.
That's like we're supposed to talk back or not know our manners or hit someone or whatever because we haven't matured yet. We haven't learned all the rules of how people are supposed to behave in society. And that's part of our job to learn. But it's totally natural for kids to have tantrums and do all the other things. Doesn't mean you failed. It just means that your child is going through whatever stage they're in and there's some tools that you can learn about how to help them get through it and teach them what they need to know.
That is so true. And have you ever felt though when you're going through all of that and thinking that you're failing, just then how exhausted you feel trying to white knuckle it through and do everything right? Like you're
Yes.
trying all the things that all the people say to do, and then you're just so tired from trying those things.
Yeah. And when it's day after day, it does get really exhausting. And then you can get into a pattern, which I used to be in too, which is promising yourself, I'm going to do better tomorrow. Right. Tomorrow will
Mhm.
be better. I've got this resolve. I've made this commitment. Okay. Tomorrow I'm not going to yell at my kids like I did today. And then tomorrow comes, but the stresses are still there. And so you do it again. And then you might start beating up on yourself
Yeah.
for it. Right. And then you're
Yeah.
stuck in this cycle.
Oh my gosh, yes.
right? But it's just that we have to get underneath that to help, reduce some of that stress and learn some new techniques so that you can get out of that cycle. But it's so hard when you're in it.
So hard. And then also just recognizing how frustrated you can become when you're not even sure what's wrong. Like, I don't understand why I keep yelling. Like, I made the intention yesterday that today was going to be better, but I don't know what's wrong. And I know I want something different. I want to experience something different in my parenting and in my caregiving, but I don't know what to do.
Yeah. And it's so hard. And then you start to think, I'm the only one feeling this way.
Yeah.
There's something wrong with me. I'm alone.
I'm a terrible parent. I'm a terrible person. I shouldn't be a caregiver.
Yeah. And the truth
Mhm,
is, you're not alone, right?
mhm,
Because this is what we have gone through, and this is what we hear from our clients all the time.
mhm.
And if you're ever in a mom's Facebook group, right, there are plenty of
Oh
people
gosh.
reaching out there going, "Can someone help with this? I feel like I'm all alone." And everyone responds, "No, I've been through that too," right? But
Yeah.
in our most serious moments, right, when we're really kind of despairing, it does feel like we're the only one that we're alone. Just know that you're not.
Mhm,
So I guess my question for everybody who's listening is, which of these resonate for you? What sounds most like some of the feelings you're having right now? Just kind of note that for yourself. Or is there something else that came to mind that you realize is underneath some of that stress you're feeling?
mhm. The one that really resonated with me that you shared was that if my child isn't behaving, that means I'm a bad parent. That means I'm failing. And I mean, we've all been there, right? We've all felt that way. And you know what I say about shoulding? Like
What you said.
when we all feel we should do better or know what to do, I invite people to stop shoulding all over themselves.
I love that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. Should can get in our way so much, right? It creates this pressure
Hmm.
and it kind of puts you in a vice, right? Like a bind, like, and then makes it much harder to get out of it because you think you have to do something. And actually, there are some different options available to you.
There definitely are. If you feel like you're shooting on yourself, do you, do you have a physical sensation with that? Or is it more of a mental thought
Yeah,
process?
I feel a lot of tension in my stomach usually.
Oh,
Stomach or my
yeah.
throat. Yeah, I just
Mine is like right here,
yeah,
or it's like this inside. I
yeah,
don't know.
like a lot of movement and
Yeah, like I can't
butterflies.
describe
Yeah.
it other than just doing the hand movements. Like I just feel like this inside and my shoulders are up and my chest is tight and it's just like this all the time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so it can be really helpful sometimes to tune into how our bodies are feeling because those are really good clues for us
Hmm.
about our stress. Like, because sometimes we're just going through the motions, right? Just think I have to take the next step, and we don't even realize
Yeah,
how stressed we are, and our body can give us so much information about how we're feeling.
that's so true. That's not advice that I hear a lot. Like pay attention as you're going through the motions of the day. Like where are your shoulders? How is your chest feeling? How is your stomach feeling? Can we pay attention to that and then, you know, try to reset?
Yeah, not easy, but it can be really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, just again, just start taking note. Notice the patterns going on for yourself. So, one of the key questions that we want to ask you today is how do you want to show up as a parent or caregiver? What would that look like? Because when we're stuck in ongoing stress, right, and we're dissatisfied with the situation that we're in, that can lead us to do things that we kind of regret, like yelling or being short with our loved ones, right? Or even feeling like, I just don't want to do this anymore. Let me out of here. Let me just
Right.
escape, right? And then that kind of guilt that comes from
Mm.
feeling that way. Right? I can't leave, right? Everyone's depending on me. How can I say
Yeah.
that? But again, it's so normal. But what happens when we're feeling this stress and we're feeling those feelings and having those thoughts is there gets to be a gap between where we are and where we wish we could be. So we're asking you, what's the place that you wish you could be? And what kind of energy do you want to show up with? And what kind of feeling do you want your child or the person you're caring for to feel from you? What's your ideal in those situations? So
Yeah.
can you kind of give an example of something like that for yourself, Jen?
Oh, totally. Mine is an example from being a parent and a caregiver at the same time. So my daughter deals with some complex medical issues, and I remember when she was first diagnosed being in the hospital and just becoming like the hospital. Like I was showing up like the hospital. I was showing up like a care team member or a diagnosis or, you know, cold and kind of um clinical. And I realized that I didn't want to be that. I wanted to be more a reminder of home, and I wanted to her to, even in the like scary moment, to be reminded of her home and her caring mother and comfort. And so I really took a hard look and said, where can I show up differently in this space? How can I show up differently in this space? And I decided to always try to come from love and a
Mm,
place of patience.
nice. Yeah, I know for me, even recently, like even though when you do this work on yourself, things
Yeah.
still come up,
Oh
right?
my
We
gosh.
still
Yep.
still stressed. I mean, I remember feeling very anxious and overwhelmed recently. And
Mhm.
for me, that comes out as being very tense, interrupting people in my family, just like having kind of a shorter fuse, yelling, or just getting impatient, or just coming out as kind of short when I normally wouldn't do that, and so when I actually was able to catch myself and say, well, yeah, like what's going on for me? How do I want to show up differently? I just realized that like my child was getting just this very negative vibe from me, right? And that I really just wanted to show up as calmer. I wanted them to feel like, hey, mom is happy, mom is able to listen, mom is kind of giving me just a more positive energy and just like an environment to be in. And so I just really focused on, okay, even though I may not feel my best, how can when pick my child up from school say something as simple as, hey, I'm really happy to see you, which was true.
Yeah.
And then just like take a breath for myself and then just listen. And that made a really big difference for me.
I love that. Yeah.
So it might help for people to know a little bit more about our background. Like what
Mm.
else have we been through, right? Because we've been through some stuff.
Everyone's been through some stuff, and
Right.
I'm very
And
grateful to be able to share mine to help others.
yeah, and like what was a turning point for us and what kind of helped make the difference? So I'll just share that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have 2 kids, and things are going along really smoothly with my older daughter. And then, in the last trimester of my pregnancy with my younger daughter, my husband went in for routine nose surgery and through a series of terrible mishaps ended up being partially paralyzed on his left side. Um, and so he spent most of that trimester in the hospital, in ICU, in inpatient rehab, and came out 2 weeks before our daughter was born. And he was he had to learn to walk again, and he was still in a wheelchair. Um, and so everything about that time was tense. And even after my child, was born, and I was so happy, and she was wonderful, I was really tense. And then it came to mothering, right? I had this, still, preschooler at home and this new baby, and I was exhausted. I just had
Wow.
nothing. And all this joy that I'd had taking care of my first child and just being there and playing with her, I just like wanted to lie on the floor and I just like couldn't do anything with my little one. She was on the floor, I'd lie with her, she'd be in her little play area, but I just couldn't do anything. And I was really short tempered with my older child, and none of this was how I wanted to be. And I had this big feeling like I just wanted to escape. Which was, again, as we talked about, you feel guilty about that, right? I just needed a
Yeah.
break, and I'm not so good at asking for help. I wasn't at that time. I'm better now, but, like, it never occurred to me, like, "Oh, who could I turn to?" Because we don't have family in the area, so it was just one foot in front of the next, in front of the next, but it was really overwhelming, and it would go up and down, things would get better, but I sort of hadn't really fully resolved it. And I remember my older daughter was getting a little bit older, and there was this time that she hadn't cleaned her room again, and I yelled at her. And as those words were coming out of my mouth, I remember thinking, why am I yelling? I keep promising myself day after day that I'm going to stop, and I really mean it. but I can't. And I just don't want to go on like this anymore. And that was really the turning point for me. Now, I have a background in coaching and counseling and conflict management and leadership development. And it's
Mhm.
so interesting how you can know all this stuff, but sometimes applying it to your own life goes whoop. But when I actually kind of had that straw that break the camel's back moment, I'm like, I don't want to go on anymore like this.
Yeah.
It caused me to kind of stop and reflect on what I did know about using empathy with other people in tough moments and with myself, and how to talk to people when you're having a conflict. And when I was able to apply that, things started getting a lot easier, and then things got better from there. But it's just that one moment where like I just can't go on this way anymore. How about you? What was your
Yeah,
experience
isn't
like?
it those moments that
Yeah.
get us and stick with us? So you said something that is so resonant with my experience. It's like I know all this stuff, and then for you it was to use it for yourself. It was difficult. For me, I've been managing my own chronic illness for 3 decades. I was 16 when I had my first kidney transplant. And I
Mhm.
had another one in 2012. And then my daughter was diagnosed with her difficult diagnosis in 2015 when she was 7. And so it was like, I know this stuff. I know how to be in the hospital. I know how to like talk to the doctors and the care team. I know. And then it's someone that you love so much that's going through it, and it just doesn't apply.
Yeah.
You forget it all. And it got to a point where just the stress of it all and helping her process her complex emotions and thoughts around the diagnosis and the medical trauma that she experienced, I I couldn't eat without feeling sick to my stomach. The anxiety was so palpable. I went down to 100 pounds. I couldn't be there for her or my husband the way that I wanted to. I couldn't be there for myself the way I wanted to. And I realized like I can't continue on this way anymore. And so there was some sort of breakthrough where I was like, wait a minute, I remember guided imagery helped me with stress levels when I was worrying and anxious about my second transplant. How can that help me here? And so got into some more of that. At the same time, I was laid off from my corporate marketing gig. And for some insane idea reason, I decided, hey, I'll sign up for life coaching certification. And as I was going through that, I thought it was for my career, and it really was to heal me.
So interesting, isn't it? How that
It's
comes
super
about.
interesting. And what
Yeah.
I hear in both of those stories is that moment that kind of jolted us into allowing ourselves to slow down for a moment and ask a powerful question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, hearing both of our stories, I can also see in it that thread of how stress in life circumstances can come from such a different variety of sources. And I think one of the ones that was really big for me was that idea of having to be perfect, like having
Mm,
to be the perfect mom, having to be the perfect mom and caregiver for my daughter who is ill. How am I looking from the outside to others of how I am performing in this role? And so that perfectionism piece really, really increased my stress level.
yeah, for sure. I can relate to that. I call myself a recovering perfectionist, right? I've
Yeah,
been able to let go through a lot, but there are pieces that are still there and that pressure that we put on ourselves. And I
right.
think another piece that I see a lot is what I call an expectation gap. And
Mm,
it comes in like two flavors. One is the expectations that we're putting on ourselves
mhm.
for like how we want to show up, but that frustration we've been talking about where we're not. Um, and also how we thought things might be, but maybe they're not the way that we envision them. Ever have that happen?
Oh my goodness. When you have that expectation that's disrupted, and especially when it's a paradigm shifting disruption, it takes a lot. to look at that gap and see how you might like maneuver it differently.
Yeah, and then the other piece I want to mention is the gaps that we have about our expectations for our kids.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So sometimes we expect things of them that they're not old enough or mature enough to do. And the more we keep expecting it, the more frustrated we're going to get. So it could be knowing that a 3-year-old isn't really able to show empathy yet for other people, but expecting them to be able to do that. That doesn't develop till later, I mean, early elementary school, really. Or maybe that your 10-year-old just can't remember to take his instrument to band every week because he just doesn't have those skills, or maybe you suspect he has ADHD, whatever it is, something's stopping him, and you're just like, he's old enough, he's 10, he should be able to do it, but he can't. So let's instead of like helping him figure out how to do it, you just stay with that. But he's old enough, he should do it. Let me punish him for not doing it, right? And then
Right.
stay locked in these expectation gaps that frustrate everybody.
One of those expectation gaps I had actually has to do with beliefs about who I was supposed to be as a
Mm,
parent. So coming from that place of like, especially when they're toddlers, like, well, I'm the parent, so they're supposed to obey me and they're supposed to do what I say simply because I say it, versus realizing like, no, this is like a legit human being that has their own spirit and ideas and they're developing, and can I recognize that and honor that rather than trying to fit this sweet person into like this little mold that I have in my head about what a parent-child relationship is supposed to be and look like.
yeah, yeah, and sometimes that comes from, like, what we experienced as kids, right? What do we think
Yeah.
that's supposed to look like? And, another way that can show up for people is, fear of asking for help, and I know that one really well.
Yeah.
And again, what did you learn in childhood about that? Maybe when you asked for help, you were put down for it,
Mm,
or maybe you just got the message you weren't supposed to ask for help, like, you just need to figure this out on your own. Or maybe someone flat out told you no when you asked, or maybe it seemed like there was no one even there to ask in the first place.
right.
And so, whatever those patterns were for you, we can grow up thinking now, even as adults, if I ask for help, those same things are going to happen. Even though the people we're around, our partner, our coworkers, our friends, are totally different from those people giving you those messages as kids, we carry that hurt with us, and it can make it hard to ask for help.
That resonates. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It also goes along with that myth I would believe as well for myself, is that like no matter what's going on, like you just have to keep going. And like you just white knuckle it. And you just have to keep one foot in front of the other and just go and don't pause and look around. And so that reminds me of things that maybe we even learned in childhood, like if we were just expected to keep going, like, oh, I don't feel good, or I'm having this feeling, or what, but you still got to get up and you still have to go to school and we're not going to acknowledge it and you just have to keep going. And that's one of the reasons that I feel so deeply about resilience and proactive resilience and not having to white knuckle it through life. Like we can make some adjustments to support ourselves differently.
Yeah, and that's true for all of these beliefs we're talking about, right? When we're in them, we don't know,
Mm-mm.
right? But there's so many ways around and through.
Yeah.
And I think I would be remiss in just without mentioning this last one, which is this that we have stresses from our daily life, right? Maybe you're not happy in your work,
Mhm.
or you just have a really unreasonable boss,
Yeah.
or you have stress with your partner, that's contributing to the stress you're feeling as a caregiver or as a parent. I remember one time a client came to me in a consultation call, and she was talking about this difficulty she was having with her really strong-willed 3-year-old. But as she talked, she also talked about that her husband wasn't really there, and that he was just busy doing his own thing, and he shared a lot of their personal stuff with his mother, and the mother came back with comments, and it just seemed like there was a lot of friction in the relationship. And so I asked her whether it felt to her as though these other tensions she was describing might be making it even more difficult for her to stay calm and figuring out what to do with her child. And she's like, "Oh yeah, I didn't realize that." Right? Sometimes when we're in it, we don't see it.
Right. We just keep putting one foot
One
in front
foot in
of the
front of the
other.
other.
We keep going. So, for those of you who are listening, which one of these sources of stress resonates with you? I mean, I can say, and I do this work all the time, I can say there are a couple of them that are resonating with me right now. So, which ones are resonating most for you? And as you answer that for yourself, I'm also going to invite you to pause for a minute and think about what signals in your life and every day that you might be missing that are alerting you to these stresses that you're experiencing. Like one of them we mentioned a little earlier. Where do you feel stress in your body? So, from all of these causes of stress, we're getting signals like tension in our body, fatigue, frustration, exhaustion, beating ourselves up, unhappiness with ourselves, and blaming ourselves and our situation. And then, as Sharon had mentioned, because we're in the thick of it, we don't even realize the pattern we're in. But these signals are all letting us know that we're having a really strong emotions and we would benefit from working through them. So we want to give you a few solutions that you can start with to start alleviating some of this.
Yeah, so one thing that is helpful for a bunch of my clients who are like really worried about yelling or just like, what do I do with my kids? And I'm just so overwhelmed
What
with
do I do with
yelling,
my kids?
with the yelling, with the arguing, with the talking back, with the chaos in the house, with, I just feel like I'm going to blow. I can't take it. Or I just need to escape from this, right? Either one of
Yeah.
those fight or flight reactions that are two of the most common
Mm-hmm.
responses we have to stress. And I say, you know what? It's okay to leave the room for a minute if you need to. Like you shouldn't just bolt out of there. What I recommend is sort of a three-step process. One, say to your kids, hey, I need to leave for a minute. I'm just feeling a little overwhelmed, or I'm feeling like I want to yell and I don't want to, whatever it is for you. And I just want to take a minute and calm down, and then I'll be back to talk to you. So your
Yeah.
kids know why you're leaving the room, and then you're also modeling for them a way that they can learn to manage their own emotions when they get upset,
Mm.
right? And of course, if you have young ones, make sure they're safe before you disappear, right? And then when you leave, um, do something that's going to help you calm down. And that varies for each person, but some ideas. Maybe you want to do some stretches or a little bit of exercise. Maybe you want to listen to some music that calms you down or revs you up, whatever your mood needs. Because where the part of our brain that registers music is very close to the part of our brain that processes emotions. So that's why those things work so well together. Maybe you need to go outside, just breathe some fresh air or walk around for a minute or two. Um, Maybe you just need to breathe. That works for some people too. Maybe you want to call a friend or text a friend. One mom told me that she liked to look at family pictures just to remind herself, oh, I do have a great family, and just kind of get joy from that. Um, Another parent told me that they like to find something that's going to make them laugh. So they'll find a funny video or something. Any of that just like a pattern interrupt that calms you down, that gets you out of that situation where it's just too much and helps you get to a point where you can go back. And then the third step is then to go talk to your kids about whatever it is that was going on that needed attention. But now you're in a more regulated space in order to do that the way you want to. And you can really respond to what's happening in a more thoughtful way rather than just reacting out of the stress that you had the moment before you left. So that's one approach that you can consider. How about you?
I think that's a great approach. And it actually ties in with what I invite people to do. And what I did for myself is one, that reminder and invitation to be gentle with yourself and realize what's going on and not try to add on more guilt for feeling the way you're feeling. Just be gentle with yourself. And also, literally, when I first started doing this work, I practiced breathing, like intentional breathing for 3 months so that I could get back to myself and how I wanted to show up as a parent. So one of the easy things to do, because you have your breath with you all the time, is the 4-step box breathing, where you take in a breath and you hold it 2, 3, 4. I'm sorry, take in a breath for 4, hold it for 4, exhale for 4, hold it for 4, and then do a couple repetitions of that just to really get back into your body, bring your wise mind back online so that you aren't in those fight or flight reactions. So I like to breathe.
I really like doing box breathing. I'm so glad you mentioned it. At night when my mind is racing sometimes and I do box breathing, it just like gives me something else to focus on too. It helps me go to sleep. That's such a wonderful tool. I'm so glad you mentioned that. So we want to take a minute or two and think about kind of the things we've discussed and think about, are there any insights or action items that you want to take away from listening to us today? Maybe it's how you want to show up as a parent or a caregiver. Maybe it's clarity around what's causing some of your stress. Or maybe it's just knowing that you're not alone in whatever you're feeling. So again, just take a minute and think, what would you like to take away and add to your repertoire or just know for yourself from this conversation today?
I love those invitations, Sharon, and especially the last one of knowing that you aren't alone. And most parents and or caregivers are feeling one or many of the same things that you are. And so, in addition to what we've shared today, we'd also like to share some additional resources for you if you'd like to go a little bit deeper. I have a free resource on my website called You Can't Self Care Your Way Out of Caregiver Burnout. And we'll include those in the postings if you'd like to get that.
And I have a resource called Cool Headed Parenting, 4 Ways to Avoid Yelling. Again, on my website, and we'll include that in the show notes. And then if you'd like to contact us for further questions or inquire about one-on-one coaching, you can reach us at our websites. And Jen, what's yours?
Mine is prosiliencecoach.com. That's PROSILIENCE coach.com. And Sharon, how about you?
I'm at Sharon Epstein Coaching.com. So as we close, we just want to leave you with some encouragement. Everything that you're feeling is totally normal and so, so, so common. And even if you have some self-doubt, we want you to know that you're doing a great job as a parent and caregiver. That you obviously really care about doing a great job because you've been listening today. And your kids and your loved ones are so lucky to have you doing your best for them and trying to do the best for yourself. So keep at it, keep going. Thank you so much for listening.